family and have disposable income. Now, how much is it going to take? The math has been done, so it's all math. Nobody can argue this stuff. It'd be, on average across the country, $40 an hour on average, approximately, because it's an average, because the cost of living is different, as we all know, in different areas of states and the country. Okay, but you see the problems they cause. So don't blame people in your local community, even the politicians, the mayors, and the city council, and the supervisors. Don't blame people in your state, the legislators, and the politicians, and the governor. We don't. No. Put the blame squarely where it belongs. The Federal Reserve bankster class. These people and their political whores. That's all they are. They're lapdogs. They're sellouts. They're sycophants, bootlickers, brown nosers. That's who all these politicians are. I mean, if this was a Democrat-Republican thing, it'd be really simple. Oh, my gosh, I'd say, oh, vote Democrat, or oh, vote Republican. And no, God knows, I wish it was that simple and cut and dry. No, they're colluding against the best interests of the people. This makes it totally fascist, my friends. Okay? Listen, progress has a definition relative to capitalism. Okay? Do you understand? Progress is a rising tide of prosperity that lifts all boats. Okay, it doesn't submerge some while lifting some to the highest heavens. But that's what we have now. I mean, I don't know how we contend and cope with it as well. We're taking our oppression very well in America, but it's hitting the wall. We're hitting the wall. It's all hitting the fan, and thank God, because it's been a long time coming where the rubber's starting to meet the road, where people are realizing, hey man, this is about life and death. People are dying out on the streets. People are losing their will to live. They're killing themselves. Suicides are up, even among children. They don't want to be raised into a world like this. This is how we treat people. Our own native-born American sons and daughters are allowed to die out in the cold. Well, we've got multi-billionaires calling for a basic universal income. Even they know they want to live in a kinder, safer, gentler society. Okay? There's plenty. I mean, why would you make people suffer unnecessarily? Do you understand if you don't need to? Okay, prove to me the system's going to break down if we're all born rich. Okay, if at birth that we're handed our shares in the oil and the gold and the silver and the timber and the fishing and the agriculture, what's wrong with that? If that's a thus saith the Lord thing, and I firmly believe it is, if God had his way, that's exactly how it would be, and the system didn't break down, that people still felt that instinct to want to serve, that they were vapid if they didn't feel appreciated, to utilize the talents, their God-given talents, and to serve humanity, because God speaks loud and clear when you're just being a lazy so-and-so, decadent pile of crap, that you're not content. You're not going to find satisfaction or gratification in life. You've got to serve. We all know we've got to serve. But we should be free to serve how we want, who we want, where we want, at any time we want. And change that like you change your underwear, right? At any time we want. Okay, if we're free, that's the way it must be. Okay, it is not God's will that we're under the gun, under the thumb of evil men that are ruling over our affairs, that create the policies we're all forced to live under, that they exempt themselves from. So progress dictates that your money naturally goes up in worth if you're making progress relative to supply and demand. And we do. We find easier and easier methods to produce the things we want and need. And a good example is the VCR. Okay, there was a time when it cost $1,000 or more. People had to rent VCRs. And then we found easier methods to produce these things. So people were all able to afford them. Become the 90s. You could get a VCR for, $50 of 90s money. Okay? When before it was $1,000 just 10 years earlier. You understand? This should have happened with housing. And people say, well, wait, that's different. No, it isn't. Why we found easier and easier means to produce housing. Hell, we've got machines they can set up that will build a block house. Did you know that? I mean, look, go online and look at these machines that can build block houses. Lay the mortar, lay the blocks, the whole bit. So there's very little manpower needed. Look at the state-of-the-art equipment out there, heavy equipment, this sort of thing, state-of-the-art power tools. We can stamp houses out like pancakes, my friends. They should have gone way down in price. So when you could buy a house anywhere in America, my hometown happens to be Santa Cruz, California, on the beautiful Monterey Bay, you could get a house for under $10,000. Okay, single family house. Do you understand? Of course, you'd clear maybe $200 a month on a minimum wage job at a buck at 50 an hour, whatever. But still, you could support your family comfortably and have disposable income. Be a homeowner, middle class, the whole bit. American dream. That's a reality I knew. So that could have increased from that point. Houses could have gone to $5,000. Do you understand? So that means the worth of your housing dollars goes up. That's how you create a rising tide of prosperity that lifts all boats. So this is a two-way street. So anybody that just thinks, oh, I'm only saying the only answer is to keep giving pay increases. No, I'm saying to have sound economic policies, to have justice, not to have fascism, to have a true democracy where the people get their way. For instance, the bailout of '08, instead of the criminal bankster class. These that's what they are. They're criminals. And the politicians, they all ought to be locked up together. The Federal Reservists and their political cohorts ought to all be locked up together. And the executives and the Labor Department, throw them all in jail together. That's it, man. I would, if I had my way. And Trump, it's it, man. You got to dump the Federal Reserve, man, or else as far as I'm concerned, you haven't done squat, really. I know that the establishmentarian's been nipping at your heel, and I totally support you still, because I do believe that prosperity is the best path to freedom. Okay, that's it. I'm not preaching any kind of prosperity gospel unless it's a universal thing. Okay, but I just, how I need to conflate spiritual values with these worldly ones that we're all forced to value. Okay, and understand how they're tied together, and our contentment, our happiness, our joy, our peace, our safety, security, freedom, everything is entangled in those things. So, getting to the bottom of these issues and understanding rudimentary economics so you can hold your own with anybody is something everybody should have. So you got to be able to say, no, this is not capitalism. No, if it was, I'd be slamming. I'd be the biggest socialist you ever met. Okay, but they're all just words. Michael Hudson, great guy, wrote J is for Junk Economics. He'll explain to you. They're just words people bandy about. What does it mean? Who's defining them? If we don't sit down and define terms, what exactly do you mean by capitalism? Oh, really? So capitalism is good, and if it goes on, it just creates an ever-growing wealth and income disparity, and it creates poverty and the need for a welfare state, and it produces crime and dubious war and national and personal individual debt. Oh, I'd be against I'd hate capitalism, but the difference is I'm not ignorant. I happen to know what true capitalism is. And I know what true capitalism produces. I know how to define progress relative to true capitalism. Okay? So don't try to, feed me horse manure and call it applesauce, okay? I know the difference. So unequivocally, Trump must dump the Fed. Okay, I'm going to end it there, and I'm going to get on to some recent current events. So I wanted to make a correction, just so people understand this Pottersville I'm alluding to in the previous title of a video, that America has just become one big fat Pottersville. It's from that movie, what's it called? The classic show, It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah, that's it. With, what's his name? Oh, that famous actor. I can't remember his name. It doesn't matter. But yeah, it's a classic. Most everybody in America has seen that thing. That's above 10 probably. But yeah, Pottersville. It alludes to this, we got this renter-tenant class. And that's what's just been growing and growing for decades in America. And California is leading the way, where now we've got a majority of California residents are now renters. Okay, so it's really split. There's a big schism, a big division, a breakdown between tenants and landlords. Okay, and that's it. And the majority, if we had a democracy, would get their way. And I can tell you with certainty that the renters, the tenants, would rather have their rents go down. So do we have a democracy? Do we have capitalism? Where's the progress? Okay, more and more people are buying multiple homes, but fewer and fewer people can afford to buy a home. So when they come up with these stupid statistics, they're always bandying about, don't buy it, okay? There's fewer and fewer first-time homeowners. It's like pulling a rabbit out of the hat. It's become but a pipe dream. The hopes have been dashed for people to become homeowners in California. It's a dead dream. That's what they've done. That's what I mean by one big fat Pottersville. But that's where that term comes from. Just so that there was no confusion, because I know I got distracted in thought like I do all the time, and I didn't explain that very well. I was talking about all these qualities that women have that men don't typically have, or men don't have as great a quality in that area. And another one I stumbled upon is that women, they're nicer to each other. They're more loving and more empathetic. And men just don't have. They have better relationships with each other, generally speaking. Men just, I see it myself. Well, I can give a guy a hug and I can shake his hand and I can tell him I love him, but we're kind of loners. We're a little aloof. We're not open books to each other like women are. That they're much more likely to bounce, their feelings off each other. But men, they kind of repress their feelings. They don't want to come across like Nancy's big babies and whatever. So we're kind of hung up like that, and we've all got both genders have their idiosyncrasies. So I'm not saying women are perfect. How can you be in this crazy world? It's tough. But anyhow, I've been using this term contrite, and I'm not sure that I was using it right, but really, it's really a variation of the term compunction. I find myself one of the things I love to do is look up words that I already know often. But what it'll do, it'll reaffirm either I was using the term correctly, but also what it can do is give you some other synonyms, and then you can expand on your vocabulary and your foothold on knowledge by looking up other terms. And I love the way that works. It's like a pyramid thing, but I love to have communication skills, and part of it is having a good, decent vocabulary and using the words correctly, of course. You've got to do that. But contrition, I always kind of thought of that as kind of a female thing, but really, like compunction may be the male thing, but it comes down to a sense of a sober-minded kind of sense of, what, we've all done wrong things. We've got to be honest. It's a feeling of not whatever the opposite of self-exaltation is. While on one hand, I will tell people that I believe that it's good to have a very high opinion of ourselves because we're God's children. So you have high self-esteem, but it must be tempered with a sober-minded attitude filled with humility to be effective friends of God and to be friends to humanity, and to not be a turnoff. So we can't be conceited and narcissistic, but we should think very highly of ourselves. We should love ourselves, but not be in love with ourselves. You see, there's a big difference between loving ourselves and having a high, lofty opinion because God has put it in our hearts to think, wow, you know what? I am a noble human being. My values are good. They're clean. My heart is pure. And, I'm a well-wisher, and I have goodwill toward men. That's good. And you should, that's because God put those things in your heart. You have good, right values. That's good. But you see, you can't let it go to your head. It has nothing to do with conceit, ego, or vanity. Those things are negative. So we're walking this line. It's not easy being human. It's just this is what we're all tasked to do. We've got to live this life as humans as successfully as we can. And some of the things that get me through is just fully believing in equality, universal freedom, absolute universal freedom for everybody. And these things I think will help you too. Have a pure heart, turn to God in prayer, ask God the right opinion to have about this issue, that issue, or the next issue. So It's very important to have that relationship. Know that God's not a distant God. He's right there with you. Anytime you call on him, he's with you, man. Prayers and stuff. Talk things over with God just like you would a friend. And he's the only one that's fair to turn to for certain things, because he's the only one that can know, love, and understand us the way we need to be known, loved, and understood. We're literally his property. He literally owns us. He's the one that's going to decide where body and soul end up. Excuse me.